Hi, and welcome to Crossroads. It's been a while since we've done this last format. I'm Deepthi, a solution consultant from the team in Chicago here. Happy 2025 to everyone. We've got two very special guests with us here today that I'm very excited to introduce. I have Elizabeth Brady. Her career as an executive includes being vice president of global supply chain for Dexcom and Illumina. She's now working with growth stage and emerging companies in helping them scale operations and manage risks more effectively. I also have with me Maria Quintero. She has a PhD in food science and technology and food microbiology. She's now a director of supply quality at Dairy Farmers of America, where she leads food safety audits, conducts CCP validations, studies with their suppliers. I know we've had a lot of conversations in the past, but I'm excited to get started with a round of questions for you guys. Maria, I'll start with you. I think your path from a PhD to supply chain is extremely fascinating. And what motivated you to sort of make that move? And how did you navigate that transition?
Well, thank you for having me here. This is exciting to be able to share some of our experiences in our careers. That takes me back a little bit on what I did as my undergrad. When I was ready to go to college, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to study sciences, biology specifically, and I found this wonderful career that's called food processing engineering. That's what I did for my bachelor. It just was the perfect mix of science to something applied. And what best or what better than food, which is something that impacts everybody's life on a daily basis, right? Um, although I had sworn in high school that I would never become an engineer, that's where I landed. Throughout my career, my undergrad, I really loved all the principles that I learned, uh, food manufacturing, processing, concepts of heat transfer, modeling, etc., which um, were a little tough to navigate, but I made it through. Um, and then the combination with science, microbiology, was the perfect mix. Once I was done with my bachelor's, I really didn't want to go directly to work in a food manufacturing plant and become the plant engineer, which is usually where you land once you graduate from that career in Columbia. So I had the opportunity to do a research internship with the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, where I got introduced to the world of research in microbiology, specifically working with foodborne pathogens. As part of that internship, I then got the opportunity to move on with getting my master's, and then it just didn't feel like enough. So I moved on to continue with extending my research project, working with foodborne pathogens, and finishing my PhD. It was a very exciting time in my life, very challenging, but also very rewarding. However, I always had in mind that I wanted to work in industry. Having that PhD opened so many different doors within the food industry, that I then landed as a food safety scientist focused on supply chain. So basically, I was able to apply all of my knowledge that I had about food processing engineering, understanding our supplier processes, and then applying them to those core food safety principles where how do we keep the bad microbes out of our food? Um, I just find this world fascinating. That's where I decided to keep evolving my career, always working with it with suppliers and understanding the challenges that supply chain brings to uh, the industry in general.
That sounds fascinating. You had a direction that you wanted to go in and you just sort of went after it. Um, my next question is for Elizabeth. You've spent decades in the supply chain. I think how has your leadership journey sort of evolved during this time, and what are some of the boldest decisions you think you've made in your career?
Oh gosh. My leadership has definitely changed. At the beginning, when I was one of the few women in the industry, I think I was very worried about how I was going to be perceived. And so I think I came across as very hard and driven and, by the book, by the numbers. And over time, I really started to learn that if you want the best out of your team, you don't want a fear-driven organization. When people are afraid, they go into their little lizard brain and they're just, how do I survive? And when you're in that mode, you're not doing your creative problem solving that Maria talked to. Every day there's new challenges in supply chain, right? You've got to have the mental space to be able to sort it out and solve it. So actually, it was not until I came to California and had a phenomenal manager working for me who got me into meditation. And that was a significant change in the way I managed people in allowing them to downshift, catch their breath, and then move forward.
I think even based on the previous conversations that we had, you sort of spoke about empowering your team and sort of building that fear-free environment.
Yeah.
You talked through some examples of things that you've done as a leader that have resulted in, your team being more innovative, or just empowering your team.
It was interesting. I'll tell you a few examples. One was really simple. The team was kind of in a rut and a little bit demoralized over some of the challenges and some of the leadership they had had. And it was as simple as putting a little surprise on their desk every day. So it was a little crossword puzzle or a little challenge. Like if you were an element on the periodic table, which element would you be and why? And we posted those together as a group so everybody could see them. So it was that idea of getting comfortable, engaging in a personal level, and it allows some crazy things to happen. We extended this idea of all being in the same ship and rowing the same direction to our suppliers. And because they were on this journey with us, one supplier had terrible technical problems. It was a really difficult part to make. Somehow they lost the secret sauce on it. But because we had built this open and kind, succeeding together relationship versus one that was just do what I tell you, deliver, they allowed us to come in and plant our engineers in their facility for almost 2 years to help them get to the point where they could produce that part correctly again. So, incredible things happen when you allow people to not be afraid of the negative ramifications of their actions.
Absolutely. Coming back to you, Maria, I think just building on your background, how do you think sort of your PhD has influenced, your current role, how you sort of approach risk assessments?
A lot of what the PhD gives you is you learn how to follow a methodology, right? You follow procedure, you follow method, you're very detailed oriented, you prep your experiments, you have everything ready to go, and you follow every single step. So that's very important. You have a core, you create that discipline on how to approach different things, but then you get your data. And things don't turn out as you expect them to, which is what happens with the industry, and supply chain brings a lot of those like unexpected challenges. Like Elizabeth's example, it was wonderful. They lost their secret sauce. Yep, something happened. You don't know where. Now you need to try to fix it. Also, problem solving mode, when you now receive this slew of data that doesn't make sense, then you learn to read it, that you learn to interpret it, you learn to consider all of the variables and say, something's wrong here. And it allows you to ask more questions. It sparks that curiosity to just not be satisfied with an answer that may not be giving you everything you need and checking a box. During our PhD, we were trying to just keep asking more questions. Every time you got to a place where you thought you knew and that you thought you figured it out, then our professors just started grilling us with additional questions, additional things where they made you understand that no, you're not there yet. You need to keep going. And it creates a lot of resilience, but it also shows you that the more you know, there's a lot more to discover. Applying that into the complexities of a global supply chain, where we need to combine it with the technical expertise and be able to support a business that may also be coming with risks for financial gain, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it allows you to keep asking those questions, getting those answers that will make you feel comfortable to make a risk-based decision and say, okay, I think we're at a point where we can move forward. There's always going to be risk, but now we are able to manage it in all the different aspects what a business entails. So
you can do all the math to assess what the possibility is that something disruptive is going to happen. How big is that impact going to be? How tough is it to recover from that impact? And then is it worth mitigating it? But what I've seen over my career is that it goes beyond the numbers, and it really rests on the corporate culture. Some companies are really comfortable taking a lot of risk and other ones are not. And to be good at supply chain, you have to understand the corporate philosophy and the corporate culture towards risk.
Absolutely. I think that just depending on what appetite that organization has, just culture can vary, the ability to take on risk can vary, as you said, Elizabeth. I think that makes absolute sense. And just sort of building on that, how have you seen sort of organizations approach identifying and mitigating some of these supply chain risks? And has your approach sort of changed over your entire career?
Yeah, I think it certainly started as just the math. You know, you can put numbers to almost anything in supply chain, and there is always some subjectiveness around trying to figure out how likely something is to occur. But supply chain is interesting in that you don't get any attention unless something goes wrong. Things are going right, nobody cares about you, right? So what I learned over my career is how do you get in front of the executive team and the board of directors to talk about risk in a way that doesn't panic them, but lets them be aware. You know, after COVID happened, one of the conversations I had with a lot of executive teams in my consulting role was to say, look, it's fine that your supply chain broke. But if you did not know that it was going to break, then you have a risk management, risk assessment, and mitigation challenge.
Absolutely. Risk management is more about being able to recognize what you can do after that risk is, or let's say that unfortunate event has happened, as opposed to trying to sort of prevent it. And I think a lot of supply chain leaders that I'm speaking with, financial acuity is extremely important. So in your opinion, what are some strategies that you found effective in helping operational teams understand the impact of their decisions from a financial perspective?
It actually just starts with basic education. In my portfolio projects I work today, one of the things I do is I'm associate professor of supply chain and ERP, enterprise resource planning, for biotech manufacturing. And we start the semester talking about what is the corporate vision, strategy, mission? How do you fit with that? Because all your decisions are going to be framed, all your prioritization is going to be based on what the company is actually trying to achieve. And then we spend the next part of the class learning what we call finance for supply chain executives. And it is really just learning how to read the balance sheet, the P&L, and cash flow. So I have taken that out of the classroom when I do consulting in organizations, just really running people through, because a lot of us growing up in operations or engineering never have exposure to those basic financial statements or what they mean. So we start with that fundamental education. And then as we start to make decisions, we frame it as, okay, what impact is this going to have? A supplier gave us a great deal. If we buy a lot now, is that a good decision or not? Well, it might seem like a great decision, but we don't have enough cash. We're a small startup. We're trying to conserve money. We now understand the impact on the cash flow, so we're not going to do that, right? So it's building the baseline education and then framing the decisions that get made in a financial language.
I come from a microbiology, food safety background. Me going into the industry was like, okay, you have to be practical, and a business is a business. And if there's no business, there's no job for Maria, basically. So even a lot of times when you want to, we go to a supplier, we do an audit, and it's like, I mean, if we find a severe critical food safety issue that can put people at risk and product as risk and brand, like it's imminent and we found it, then that's a different conversation. But there are times where you don't feel comfortable because you've gathered enough data to know that there's a potential failure that can occur. I wish that I could go and say, you need to shut this down at once, no more buying from that supplier. But a lot of times that's not feasible. It may impact a lot of our SKUs. We cannot shut down and short our customers. And there's ingredients that are used in hundreds of different products that we produce. So that's when we have to come to a plan to say, okay, what's the business impact financially if we shut this down? How can we truly mitigate the risk that we found from a food safety quality perspective? Do we have ways to do it? Is it feasible financially? Does it make sense? And it all goes down to tying it to finance. So there are core food safety principles that are not compromisable, even like regardless of money. But there's that other level where the finance piece has to be very well balanced in the next steps that we're going to take to be able to mitigate that risk.
Thank you so much. What advice would you have for, young women that are trying to take more risks or, grow in the supply chain industry? I'll start with you, Elizabeth.
It's probably true in any industry, and that's don't be afraid, right? Don't worry about imposter syndrome. Don't worry about failing. Just go for it. Resilience and problem solving are characteristics that are very common among successful supply chain people. So you all the time deal with risk assessment, do the same for your career, right? Just look at it and take that chance. The benefits usually way outweigh any downside.
And Maria, any point of view, given that you come from a STEM background, and I know there's been a lot of conversation in the public about, getting more women into STEMs. Any advice for women out there who are thinking about getting a degree in STEM and then moving into industry? Anything that you can share in your personal journey that sort of helped?
Anybody that goes into STEM, I think they are people, or we are people that we like to find solutions to problems. Whether it's in science, whether it's in engineering, whether you want to come up with innovative ways to solve things or to make new things or produce new things. Supply chain, for example, it's, I think, an aspect of the industry that brings you a vast realm of possibilities, regardless of what type of STEM discipline you're at. That technical expertise is crucial. It's crucial for the industry because you need the brains and that technical expertise behind the entire operation, right? And then having that mindset of, I need to problem solve. I need to come with something different. I need to deviate from this process because this is not working. Having that STEM background might give you the tools that you need to be able to provide those solutions that will have a broader impact in the entire supply chain. And whether it's science or it's engineering or it's art, there are so many things that can be done within the supply chain realm that people that are in those fields should definitely consider it. There's always something new. There's always a new challenge. I am always fascinated by everything I learned every single day. When I think I've seen most of everything, then I get surprised, probably weekly. So that is amazing. And I think that'll keep STEM people entertained for the rest of their lives.
Personally, for me, I think when you're in a challenging role, I think when you solve a problem, the appreciation that you start having for yourself, like, oh, I didn't know I could do this. And I would have never thought I could do this until it actually, like, this problem like fell on my lap and I had to solve for it. So I think that is what sort of makes it exciting as well. The percentage of women in supply chain roles is growing today. How do the two of you see this role evolving in the future?
Women's career will be evolving in every single aspect, not only limited to supply chain. I mean, but definitely I have been extremely lucky throughout my career to have had all my managers being women that are willing to empower me and give me the flexibility in life that I need to be also have a family, and to show me that whatever you want to get done can be done and you become extremely efficient at it. I think the future of women in supply chain is being able to see a lot of more of these leaders just raise and bring the industry forward. I think my husband told me something very interesting, and he said, I really I'm fascinated by the way women think, and I love to have women managers because they become so efficient at everything they do because of all of what they have in their plate. So they have had to work so hard in their careers to prove themselves. When we're challenging something, especially at higher levels, I make sure I'm right and I have everything in the background to support it. So I think women in supply chain will just keep growing, and it'll keep making things a lot better.
I love seeing the difference, Maria, and where we're at in our careers. You know, when I started in supply chain, I was one of a very few women. And in fact, I supervised a tool room full of men, and they were so embarrassed that they worked for a woman
Yeah.
that they didn't call me Elizabeth. They called me by my initials, EB. And that stuck with me my whole career. But, you know, in those early days, I think that the women in the business felt that there were so few slots for other women. We tended to be competitive with each other. And I regret that now. And I think all of us do. And now we've become good mentors. But in the early days, it was hard for us to make room for other women. So that's been a beautiful change I've seen, right? That now everyone is working to provide the best talented people with the best opportunities. The other thing I've seen really change is work-life balance. And this is across all industries, not just in ours or in supply chain. And I hope we bring more of that. I think that we did a disservice to a lot of women when the hours we expected them to work forced them to make a choice between families or work. And I see it evolving, more work at home, less need to be at your desk 9 or 10 hours a day. So I hope that that transition continues too, because I think we lose too many good people when we don't let them balance work and life.
I agree. I mean, I got to say that I am at where I'm at in my career because of the flexibility that my different roles have offered me, and the support and the background I've had from my managers and the whole extended team, because um, our leadership has also needs to also be in line with supporting those type of flexible schedules. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to be where I'm at, because if the expectations were as demanding in terms of meeting the amount of hours, being at a certain place at a certain time, um, I don't think I would have been able to do it. I am very pleased to say that I really haven't to have to sacrifice much, thanks to all of the women leaders that I've had, like paving my path to where we're at right now. So
I'm
yeah.
glad to hear we're doing a better job.
Yes, yes. And I can't, I mean, working in manufacturing and supply chain, I mean, food safety and quality is very women driven, but operations, it's an environment that it's led by men. And it's not easy. And I see where you're coming from. And I really respect all of the leaders that paved the way for us, because standing up to a culture where women were not, where it wasn't women's place to be there, that takes a lot of resilience, that takes a lot of strength, that takes a lot of eating your feelings and showing up every day, even though you know you're being patronized, even though you know they don't respect you as much as they would respect your peer that's a man. um Unfortunately, we've all probably had to experience that at some point, but I really respect, Elizabeth, all of the women that, even though you were very competitive with each other, as you mentioned it, it makes sense why. It took a lot of grit to be able to open those additional roles and to prove that women can do sometimes a better job with everything that we have on our plates and still become what we want to become. So, yeah, I do have to thank you for that.
The small part I played, you are very welcome.
No, I think Maria, you hit the nail on the head with every sort of step that women have taken in the past to pave the way for the rest of us. I think there's a long way to go, but it's definitely made a difference. Elizabeth, leaders like you have definitely made all the difference that Maria and myself can sort of see in our lives today. And I think both of you sort of touched upon the topic of mentors, but I'd love to deep dive on that a little more. You know, one, have you had sort of significant mentors in your life? Have you mentored people? How has sort of mentorship played a role in building your careers?
I have a very controversial take on mentorship.
Yeah.
Um, so although it is the best intentions of HR to set up these programs where they pair a young, high potential person with an executive, male, female, any combination thereof, I have never had a successful relationship either as a mentor or a mentee when it's been sort of this prescribed relationship. But what I have seen be very successful for myself and others is when it just happens organically. If as long as there is a legitimate reason for someone coming and asking for guidance or wanting to bounce something off of you, you're going to get a really good input from your mentor. But I really believe that the informal is much better than the formal.
That's an interesting take, Elizabeth. Marie, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this.
I'm going to agree to that. So I have been attempted to be paired with mentors that I mean, they're nice. They know a lot. But if you don't click on a personal level, it's really hard to learn from somebody else. It's a struggle for them because it's like, I don't know what you don't know. I don't know what to teach you. I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what to ask of you. Um, I think to your initial point about team building, Elizabeth, when you connect on a personal level, wonderful things happen. The people that I call mentors throughout my career are those where I have been able to have a personal connection where they understand where I'm coming from. They understand what my life looks like and what my personal needs are, and they have then encouraged me to or shown me the way where I can do what is required of me in the job, just balancing my personal life.
Oh, absolutely. I think if you don't have that personal connection, it kind of becomes like, you know, a superficial check-in that you're doing. How are things going? You're like, it's great. And they're like,
Yeah.
great, I'm gonna check in a week again. And I think it's just about, it is with, as you said, right, building a network of people around you that can support you, that you can go to answer questions. And there are different kinds of mentors you can have in your life. There are, you know, some that are in the same field as you. There are some that are, you know, at positions that you aspire to be in. I'd love to hear from both of you around how you sort of built your professional networks over time and some strategies that you've taken. Is it reaching out to people? Is it getting warm connections? How have you sort of managed these to build that network that you have today?
When I was working an intense career full time before I moved to a portfolio, I kept my head down so much that I was not good at building a network. And I do regret that. Now that, I sit on boards of companies and I consult and teach, it gives me more flexibility to be part of professional organizations, which has been absolutely great. But there's still people from my past that I really want to stay connected with. They're such great people. They're still mentors to me or people I want to mentor myself. And so what I found is if I have a legitimate reason to reach out to them, I do it. If I see an interesting article that somehow relates to them, I'll shoot them the email. Hey, saw this, was thinking of you. Or if I see something interesting and I want someone's opinion on it, I just go ask them now. So it's being brave enough to throw myself out there, but much like the mentoring with a legitimate need. I have something I want to share or something I would like to learn from you. So let's connect.
Yes, I agree with that. The food industry is a small world. Same happens with supply chain. Same happens with the different like niches of the different industries. So that helps me keep in contact with a lot of the people that I've worked, um, former colleagues, former peers that I've worked with. When I have a reason, when I have a question, when I know they hold that expertise, I try to reach out to them. Um, we have LinkedIn now, and I'm not active in LinkedIn at all, but that allows me to maintain contact with a lot of people that I have worked with. And if I need to reach out to them, that is the way that I contact them. And usually you are able to establish um, that reconnection, I'm going to say, because we may have not spoken in several years and not know about personal emails or personal information to be contacted, but it really helps. Another thing that I've noticed is before I started in the industry, you see the different roles, right, that people hold. So a director, a vice president, a CEO, and that creates some fear to approach these people because you don't want to necessarily waste your time. One of the things that I repeat to myself, and that as I've grown throughout my career, I have started implementing, and is they are a person like you. Yes, they have more experience. Yes, they have higher titles, but they are a person that have interests that they're probably extremely nice. So I have gotten out of my comfort zone and just thrown myself out there to just build some rapport with this higher level leadership people. And you notice that once you approach them, they're for the most part extremely nice, and they actually want to engage in small talk and in small conversation with. They do have the time or the minutes to spare. And I think that's created an impact, because what I've noticed in industries is a lot of time people just don't like to approach leadership because of that fear of I'm wasting their time, they're too busy. um, Kicking off that barrier really opens the door to say, hey, thank you. Now I know you. Now I have your name. And that's opened a lot of um, doors for me as well throughout my career, because now they know me, they know who I am, and I've made a, like, let's say, a tiny impression, and they have me on the radar for maybe an opportunity that they might have or maybe opening in their realm or in their teams. So that's really worked for me, and I've met exceptional people too, which is great. So yeah.
Sounds like both of you have sort of built these relationships organically, which I think is beautiful. It keeps things real. It keeps that connection real. You're not reaching out to someone to just sort of discuss things with the idea of, hey, I need to build my network, but really with intention and thoughtfulness. Um, what what skills sort of, or what advice would you have for the next generation of supply chain leaders, or women who are hoping to be supply chain leaders?
I think people really need to embrace technology. Technology has been a huge enabler for supply chain for decades, right? If we didn't have accessibility to computers and great software, we wouldn't even be running MRP systems, more or less ERP systems, right? So don't be afraid that AI is coming, right? Figure out how to use it every day, get comfortable with it, and start leveraging it for building a stronger supply chain in the future. All it's going to do is take away some of the blocking and tackling work we do and free us up to do all the things that we wish we could get to. So my advice is be an early adopter of technology.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point of view, Elizabeth. And I think more conversations that I'm having with supply chain leaders means that they're more open to taking on technology. They're seeing technology as partners and enabling their teams, rather than sort of for their teams, or for something for their teams to sort of fear. Maria, any thoughts on this?
In addition to technology, because I'm going to say I'm not the best with it, and I wish I were, because it's a fantastic tool, and I think it really drives things forward tremendously and makes everybody's life a lot easier and more efficient and effective, is to learn how to adapt to change, but to quick change. We live in a global world. We have to interact with different cultures throughout the entire world. Things change very rapidly. And if you are afraid of change and if you don't know how to adapt to getting out of that comfort zone when something comes and hits you really fast, you're going to struggle a lot more. So be open to change. Have that mindset of, okay, these are how things are done, but today I'm going to do them differently because I have to, and I'm going to have to find another way. So don't be afraid of looking for alternatives, for looking for answers where you don't think they're going to be, because that's where they will be with this rapidly changing environment, especially in a globalized supply chain and all the challenges that comes with it. I think a lot of people learned the hard way with COVID, and there's still a lot more to learn with everything that happens around the globe.
We've got a quick rapid fire round that we'd like to do with the two of you, where we'll ask you a set of questions and the first thing that comes to your mind. Maria, maybe we start with you. What's your go-to stress relief activity? You've had a challenging day. What's the first thing you're going to do?
Well, after I put my kids to bed, I listen to podcasts. I enjoy reading, but I don't really have a lot of time to sit down and read. So I listen to a lot of podcasts, mostly about science, just different topics, what's going on in the world of science. That's how I kind of learn something new and takes my mind off supply chain.
And if you could have dinner with a historical figure, dead or alive, who would you pick?
Um, I think it would probably be, well, the one that comes to mind is Marie Curie. She's, yeah, physicist, chemist, Nobel Prize winner in a time where no women were allowed anywhere, basically. That would be her.
And what's the podcast that you're listening to right now?
Oh, I have so many. I listen to Freakonomics Radio. I listen to Science Versus. I listen to Unexplainable. I just have too many and I just go through them. Um, Smologies, it's called Ologies. And there's a kids friendly version that's called Smologies. So I listen to it before I play it to my kids. um, I just have a long list and I'm blanking. Tiny Matters. Uh,
That's quite the list.
Gastropod. There's so many, and they all have like little different type of science approaches and stories.
Okay, out of these three, which is your favorite city? New York, LA, Chicago?
I'm gonna say Chicago.
Chicago. In Chicago, what's your favorite place to get a bite to eat?
Oh,
Or your favorite type
that
of food?
I don't know. What I love about Chicago is that it has so many things to offer. I'm gonna say one of my favorite things to do in Chicago is go visit the Lagunitas tap room.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait, no, thank you so much. That was great. Evie, we'll move to you now. Coffee or tea? What
Oh,
fuels
black
that morning for you?
black coffee every day, all day.
And in terms of how efficient you are, what's your personal record for the fastest time that you've had to like pack for a trip?
20 minutes. I can absolutely do it in 20 minutes.
And your go-to stress relief activity after after a stressful day?
This is a little quirky. I have a 100-year-old printing press in my garage. And I love to just go and do the tactical work of setting type and inking the press and printing things.
What do you print? Like, is it like
Oh,
fabric?
uh, posters, cards, any small production run.
Wow. Um, if you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be?
You know, I ugh, ugh.
That's a
I
hard
would
one.
actually, I would love to sit down with the folks who first developed the Toyota production system because it was such a shift from what people were doing before. I'd love to understand how they came up with it and how they actually implemented it. I mean, we all read the textbooks, but to talk to the people who really did it, I think would be awesome.
Yeah. What's sort of a dream job that you would completely derail your career for?
Um, I would derail my career if I could be the czar that solves the problem in American healthcare of figuring out how to deliver good healthcare at a reasonable price. I would do that in a heartbeat.
And what's one moment in your career that you would like to relive?
I can think of a lot of them I'd never like to relive. Um, I it's got to be a time when I felt like we were really accomplishing something. Um, After 9/11, certainly not a great event, but the whole world basically shut down instantaneously, and it was certainly nothing we had thought we were going to ever experience. It was in none of our scenario planning. But I was working for a telecom company at the time, and the government called us and said, "We really need your help because we have to rebuild a lot of communication networks in New York." And we did some really incredible, crazy things to be able to accomplish that. And I think the fact that we felt like we were doing something good for our country was very significant.
Those are all the questions I had. Thank you so much. I think it's been fantastic speaking with both of you. Maria, hearing about your transition from a PhD to industry. Elizabeth, all of your experience in empowering teams, and then your points of view on mentorship. Very interesting, and I think I 100% agree. But thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. And I'm hoping we get to meet in person.